Hi class, I'm excited for us to be entering our units, escaping kind of our traditional print medium and moving into broadcasting and now digital areas. Of course, broadcasting and digital are intertwining, including print as well, into these online environments and these really amazing digital capabilities that let us expand our type of programming and our types of stories and articles and content for our audiences to create really rich and engaging and dynamic pieces. That's what's so exciting about this new digital media environment of the 21st century. So it's really important for us to have that base in print journalism, in AP writing style, in active voice, and how we write typical traditional news stories. And then as we grow, we can expand those into our broadcasting area, so focusing more on visuals and utilizing present tense, having a bit more of a casual performance style to bridge that larger gap between the audience and the journalist speaking. And that's also similar for digital media. So digital media as well is often used in more of a fleeting manner than print. So you might recall for print, we call that a hot medium. You have to be focused on it, reading it closely, intensely, reading it line by line. And so there's fewer distractions and your audience is just from the get-go more engaged. So for broadcast, they might be making dinner or driving, doing other things, whether it's a radio or television. And so that's why we speak in the present tense whenever possible, and we use a bit more casual language and are friendlier and maybe a bit less authoritative so that we can bridge that gap. Similarly, with digital media, we don't know if this person is reading an article quickly on their phone or listening to a podcast while they're jogging or in the car driving. There's so many neat ways we can use digital media and different platforms like a traditional, what we might call traditional now, like a website, or social media, or chat or messaging boards, discussion boards. So there's all these different ways, like blogs, that we would maybe speak differently. So we need to adapt for each of those individually, but overall, similar to broadcast, we do speak in the present tense or write in the present tense at all whenever possible. Of course, if an event already happened, then we would mention that in the past tense, but we do try to keep it present, all right, present tense to keep things current, especially in this 24-hour news cycle when we could be publishing a website or a blog or a tweet at any time of the day or night. So we're assuming that our audiences are checking in on what we're writing right now, and so we can speak and write in the present tense. So in addition to that, when we do actually type into a blog or into other online venues, we do something else very different. We use a sans serif font. So we use a serif font. That's those fonts that have the little knobs on the end, like Times New Roman, which is how we turn in our assignments. We use that for print because that, again, those little knobs help our readers to focus on them and take each word for word more closely and carefully. But for digital applications, again, someone might be reading this very quickly in between meetings or on their way to class, or we don't know how they'll be seeing it. So we use a sans serif font, like you can see here with the writing for digital media title that I have on the slide. That's a sans serif font. So we can read through that quickly. Our eyes don't stop and focus on those little knobs. You can see now my name below, Dr. Keith J. Zukis. That's in a serif font. It has little knobs on the end that help us focus more on each individual letter and word. So those are two important differences to remember as we're moving from writing for print into writing for broadcast, or now writing for digital media, is we are now in the present tense, and then we are using a sans serif font. The next really important point to remember is this idea of linear versus nonlinear writing. in our books, in our movies even, in our print articles, of course, and our print news reports. We write very linearly. This is traditional media. We have those traditional elements of the headline, the lead, the body, the conclusion. It's all in a very straightforward sequence. We always follow that inverted pyramid as well, right? Starting with the most important facts and information and then ending right with the least important facts. And so that's very traditional and that's linear. Digital media, however, now is very non-linear. They may have headlines and subheadlines and leads and so forth, but hyperlinks allow the readers to jump from one story to the next. There might be different videos throughout the piece, an audio link here or there, or a slideshow, graphics. So it's much more interactive and almost kind of like a choose your own adventure. The web doesn't impose on any space or time limits as well. So digital stories do typically include a lot more engaging multimedia pieces. These, of course, are photographs or photo slideshows, maybe photo galleries, maybe they're audio, video files, and all those different links that are related to those different websites. This is really lots more tools that you're offering your audiences so that they can get really involved in this story if they wish. Here's a couple great examples. There's an example of a lengthy feature story with audio and moving graphic images, almost kind of like a graphic novel. I really recommend that one. That's called Tomato Can Blues, and it's about cage fighting in Michigan. Really neat story. And then also, I've just updated this one for the lecture. This is an example of a photo slideshow, again with some really exciting images and some audio. And this is about the other mothers of Manhattan. And this is about nannies and childcare providers in New York City. So another really great example. So these are in a file on the Canvas homepage called Digital Media Examples. All right, so scroll down to the bottom of the homepage in that Resources section, and that's where you'll find a document called Digital Media Examples. And these two are in there. You'll find the hyperlinks, and you can check those out. They're really interesting. I highly recommend them. So again, here's a bit of a review of what I said before. We format our stories differently for readability. So because also reading on computers, it can be fatiguing on our eyes. The bright light coming from behind us, the strain of looking at a screen. So again, we use that sans serif font for anything that's going to be digital. And that takes that strain off our eyes and we can read through the messaging more quickly. Now, when we plan these stories then, we're going to use a similar manner for print stories, but we're just going to include all those more unique and dynamic ways of presenting that information. So those photos, the audio, video, links to social media. And we're going to do this by using what we call a tree, a story tree. This is one way to think about all those different elements and imagine them as a tree that grows from your central point of your story, that grows from your lead, that grows from your headline, right? We still need those initial parts, right? That's kind of the trunk of the tree, and your central point, right? Which is that core. And then we can grow from there, right? We can add sound bites and voiceovers and audio. We can add links to related websites or blogs. Of course, photographs with different scenes, even illustrations or graphics. Of course, our written story is still extremely important, but we can also expand on that. Maybe we have what's called a sidebar story. So kind of a little aside that focuses in on a specific person or a more specific topic within the larger story. And video, of course, as we're building it from broadcasting. We can, of course, use video online as well with different scenes to record, different sources that we interview. B-roll. So B-roll is kind of background footage that's kind of extras that can still provide great visuals while we do a voice over the top. So all of these different elements grow our story tree. Again, this is not linear. It starts out in our traditional linear fashion, but then it grows from there into our tree. So what does this mean? Well, it means we have to do a lot of planning ahead of time to make sure that we can manage all of these great different components. So we need to make sure we really know what that central point is and what the content then would of all those other elements would be best to present that information. Not every story audio is going to work the best for. Maybe this needs more visuals or vice versa, for example. So you want to think about what elements you want to include. Maybe a mini documentary for a video element, some analysis of different sources and B-roll with some audio elements, an interview with specific sources and ambient sound, photographs. You might incorporate large numbers of photos or combine them into an audio slideshow, and all those other digital elements. How about blogs? We hear a lot about blogs, and they're really great tools, especially for budding writers and journalists. And so I highly encourage all of us to start a blog. Use it to post all of your terrific work, all of your great assignments, your big projects especially. Start building a digital portfolio, basically, that you can look back on and use as a resource for when you're applying for jobs or you need work examples. Successful blogs do require some planning. You need a really clear purpose because there's a lot out there. And there are a lot of different categories of blogs. There's mommy blogs, there's sports blogs for different teams even, and just all sorts. How-to blogs for handymen and women, just all kinds, right? So you need to have kind of an idea of if you're going to fit into one of these larger categories, or maybe, and then even within that, what is your specific angle? What is your blog going to be about? How will your blog be unique from all the other mommy blogs even, or all the other student blogs, all right, or journalism blogs? So you want to have a specific angle and kind of a theme for your blog. You're going to want to update that. If it's a really professional blog, you need to be pretty frequent. Update it almost daily with a post or photos, or at least weekly. Maybe if it's more of a professional blog, then it's every couple weeks, or at least remember monthly, so that you're keeping up with it still. Sure, it is more of a digital resume and site to hold all of your terrific work, but maybe you have a blog that's attached to that website that you can chime in on related things that are happening in the journalism industry, or happening in electronic media or PR or advertising, things that you're interested in. That are still somewhat related to your career, if that's the type of blog or professional online portfolio that you're building. You do still need structure for blogs. They're not just sit down and write. You still need headlines, leads, a body of posts that are clear and lively. Of course, you want to link. Content should lead readers to other sources, so you're kind of growing a blog community. Link to other bloggers and other related content. And of course, have interactivity, allow comments and respond to them, and engage with your audiences. This is creating a really hyper-local environment for you and your audience to have a really special relationship on this topic. Microblogging, then, of course, are short announcements of news events that are breaking or promotions for stories that are soon to be posted. Of course, Twitter is the most widely known microblog. But you can do other types of microblogging, similarly on Facebook or other platforms, to get your information out there. So how do we create digital news packages? Well, digital news packages are capturing video and putting these different elements together. So reporters from newspapers and radio stations, they now do carry digital video cameras. so that they can post their print articles or things for the radio station also to their website, to their Facebook pages and their social media. Good video, of course, can be on Facebook and photos as well, and links on Twitter and whatnot, so Instagram. So we do want good video, good photos, and they should include a variety of close-ups and distance shots and different angles, right, for different views and creativity. Zooming and panning, so that's moving the camera while shooting, needs to be done really carefully. And we need to rehearse our voiceovers, so practicing some of that narration to bring the audience along with our story. For capturing the audio, we're going to record in locations where noise outside of what we want is really minimal. We really want to avoid windy areas that will create a lot of feedback on our microphones, and high traffic areas. Sources for long interviews should be given a chance to also plan their remarks a little bit by sending them topics or some general questions. We're not giving away everything that we might bring up, especially if it's on a tough issue, but we do want them to be prepared so that we get good sound bites in return. For our photographs, we're going to use our resolution settings that are going to be more suitable for the web. So for the web, we can't have huge files, right, with just tons of too much detail because of the storage and the time it takes to upload and download. But we do want them to have a good resolution and focus, and we want to think about how they're going to be presented on the website. So will this image be a small thumbnail where a real distance shot or a panoramic shot wouldn't be able to really be seen well? Maybe instead we need to have a close-up shot for that thumbnail, and then when people click into the story, then maybe there's more of a distance shot. So we want to think about those things. Of course, we want to make sure that the subject is always in focus. We want to move around and find those interesting angles, and we want to shoot action and emotion. Those are really important for both photography and video. So action, emotion, and creativity. So let's get a little bit deeper now, even into visual journalism. This is important, again, both for broadcasting and digital enterprises, but even we can learn some things about camera angles from this unit, where it's also applicable for photography and print. So first, let's start with camera operation and picture composition. Before we go out and shoot, we need to be sure we're prepared. For our video cameras, there are some standard camera movements. There's panning, tilting, pedestal, tongue, crane, dolly, truck, arc, to cant, and to zoom. Most of us know zoom, but a lot of these other ones we might not really be aware of, maybe to pan. So take your time, read through these, and commit them to memory if this is an area that you're thinking of going into. On the next slide, I've got a bit of a fun game where you can open this up in the PowerPoint version and let each one come up on the screen for you so that you can play along and test your skills if you remember which each of these are. Well, did you guess correctly? We'll see. So again, go through and check out those PowerPoint slides. See if you can remember all of these different important movements for a video camera. Once you get these down, you've really got the basics. So how about when we're operating a shoot? Now again, whether it's with a video camera or a still photography, we want to do some things before, during, and after. We want to check our equipment, set up a tripod, and be sure that it's level. If we don't have a tripod, we need to make ourselves a human tripod. We need to have our legs at shoulder width apart with a strong stance and tuck our elbows in so that we can secure the camera against us and against either maybe our chest or up to our eye. We want to check our power supply beforehand and make sure we have batteries or the connecting cables that are needed. Do we have an external microphone that's working, that's maybe on the camera itself or a separate one? Do we have portable lighting that's needed, and is it working? We might be inside, or it might be a cloudy day. Be sure you have your memory card so that you take the photos or the video and you of course have it. And do we need earphones? So do we need to be sure to check that the audio is coming through clearly? Now, during the shoot, we want to steady that camera. Be sure that it's in a stable place. We want to white balance it so that there isn't any glare. And we want to calibrate the zoom so that our subject is focused. Check that the autofocus is on. That often is the easiest go-to. But if you're more advanced, you can, of course, then use more of a manual way of going about that. Afterwards, we want to pack up, restore all the lens caps, be sure we have all of our equipment, be sure we save all of our recorded media as a base file. And then you can make copies from there and copy and edit from there, but always have your original file unedited so that you can always have that as a base to come back to in case something would ever get deleted or messed up. And then, of course, return all of your equipment. Maybe you checked it out from the Royal Purple or the TV station or radio station or the media center and the library. So be sure to return everything. Lighting is really important. You don't want your subject matter to be, of course, too dark or too light. So it's finding that happy place, that mid-tone where we can see our subject matter effectively. And this is some things, so just some overall points here that we want to be aware of and watch out for. So modeling. This is using the shadow side. So we can add or take away lighting in different ways with different lights or different angles, and we want to always be aware of what is that shadow side. So what does this mean? Well, it means typically we want the shadow side of the subject facing us. So this means then we can shine light from our angle at them, and that will get rid of any shadow at all, right? So that's the idea there. If we don't have a light that we can shine at them to take away that shadow, then this doesn't work. But if we do have some lighting that we can shine back at them, then that'll completely get rid of those shadows. Shadows can add depth and texture and hide imperfections. So we can use them to our advantage. So the shadows aren't always bad. And we can adjust the light for the brightest part of the image. So again, that's adjusting that balance so that different areas don't come across too bright. There are some bright lights that we can use to achieve these. Sun guns, those are called fuzzy lights. And these, though, can make a subject look guilty if they're too bright coming down on them from an upward angle. So a light kind of imagine coming above you if you're in an interrogation room, right? As we see in crime shows. And so it's a bright light from above us, and then we've got the shadow underneath our face, and that could make us look guilty. So we can use these fuzzy lights, but then we need other lights to, again, get rid of those shadows. This can also make men look unshaven and make their skin look splotchy. So we want to be careful with really bright lights. For dark light, shadows, these can also make a person look shady, evil, or untrustworthy. So work with that shadow. Overall, we want a warm light. That's the happy place to be at. Warm light makes a person look friendly. Again, not too bright, but not too dark. A good place to start, if you're inside, is to take away all natural light to begin with, and start from scratch and build up your lighting. You can, before someone even arrives, have a friend or a test subject sit where you want them to be and start building the light from different angles so that you get that nice warm light that you're hoping to achieve, or use an object as a stand-in. Typically, we'll want a main key light, maybe a subject light, the camera light, a fill light, a backlight maybe from behind them, and even some background lighting. Of course, these are all important for really professional studio setups, and often these are already there and just need some tweaking. But we might only have one or two of these if we're out in the field. For outdoor lighting, a good idea is to again take away all the light, so block the sun. You could even then add a blue light with the blue gel, and this will warm up the face and cool off that, and at the same time cool off that hot sunlight that's really too bright and offensive. We can reflect the sun with metallic screens then to fill shadows. Just be aware of your subject's line of sight so that they're not staring into a metallic screen. So now we're ready for our shoot. We've got everything set up. We've got our lighting ready to go, our cables hooked up if we're doing any audio and video recording, or our cameras have all their batteries ready to go. Now we need to think about what field of shots we're going to use. And so here are some of our basic camera shots. We have the extreme wide shot, also called the extreme long shot. You can see that here. This is what we think of often with a panoramic, right? Really large and wide out. Again, this works for some images, but not all. Often this might be an establishing shot. So this establishes the scene, right? Just like in a story, we set the scene so that people know where we're at. Next is a wide shot. So we're coming in a little bit, right? You can see here we have this in this example, the man coming closer to the camera. So we started out wide. We know he's in a desert. It's more about the environment. Next up, now we see him. Now we see who our subject matter is. So this is a wide shot or a long shot. Then we have our medium shot, also called a waist shot. So it's from the waist up to the top of the head. Here we're getting in even closer, getting to know our subject. We might close up even more as maybe we get more in depth in the story, and we do a chest shot. So it's from the chest to the top of the head. Again, we could even zoom in more for a close-up, really on the person's face, and really, again, called a shoulder shot, now getting, mostly their emotions and just the top of their shoulders. And then finally, an extreme close-up. This also might be called a headshot. The example here is maybe really extreme close-up, but a headshot would be just the head and really getting those emotions and that face. So here we do have some typical photography and especially broadcasting camera shots. We have the bust shot from the chest up, the knee shot, the two shot, which is having two people in the screen, like you see here with the teddy bear in that example. The three shot, you can see there with three people in there. The over-the-shoulder shot, we see here in the upper right-hand corner, right? The camera coming from over the shoulder. And the cross shot is similar, where we might have two guests sitting and we might cross the camera between the two. Notice that for all of these, our subject matter are focused in the frame. How do we do that? Well, we follow what's called the rule of 2/3. This is basically centering your subject. So we want the person, right, to be most often right in the smack center. So we take our frame and we cut it 3 ways horizontally and 3 ways vertically, right? Just like we're taking a line and drawing it to splice up our different angles. When we do that, we come away from our big photo with actually right, 9 little boxes. So we have our big box, and then when we put 2 lines across, dividing it evenly into thirds horizontally, and then 2 more lines vertically cutting it, then we end up with 9 different boxes. And we have our left, center, and right segments, and we have our top, our middle, and our bottom segments in the frame. And we're left with those right in the middle, right? We have that one right in the middle, that center box, right? Think of the Brady Bunch, right? Cutting up the frame into boxes. So when we cut it into 3 sections vertical and 3 sections across, we have that one center box left. And that's really where we want to focus our main image if it's just one person. We want to center that subject. But maybe we have 2 people, so they're spread out a little bit. Or maybe we're getting creative and we're not going to have them be completely in the frame. That's up to us, right? But so we want to, though, think of this rule of 2/3, which traditionally is keeping your subject matter centered and in the frame, unless we're getting really creative, and then maybe they're not in the frame, or they're off to one side or the other. Maybe they're balanced by some scenery on the other side of the frame. We want to remember these next ideas called headroom, nose room, and lead room. Notice in this example that the top of the man's head is cut off, right? So that's lacking headroom. Whereas further on the right, we see him, and here he definitely has some headroom. We can see what's above him, and we don't feel like he's squished in there. We want to also provide what's called nose room, or also lead room. So imagine he turned his face to the right. Now, we wouldn't want him to be right up against the frame. Say if for the image of him on the right-hand side, if we had him turn, then it would almost look like he's running into a wall, right? All photos online and in print, we want to have a thin black border all the way around. That really makes the photo pop. So we do that for print and online, and we, again, it makes the photo stand out and helps us visually focus as the audience on what's inside the photo. But if you have someone that looks too closely to that black line on the frame, then it can also almost look like they're about to run into a wall and makes the photo look awkward. And similarly with lead room, if say you're taking an action photo and someone's on the field playing a sport or running, again, you want them to be centered or in an area inside the frame where it doesn't look like they're about to run into the wall. So that's giving your subject some lead room. So, and this is due to always having that black border around the photo. And remember, just some points to remember in general, always seek out action and emotion. Those are the 2 most important things about our subject matter when we're shooting photography. Seek out movement or emotion, and also use some creative angles, especially if you don't have a subject person, a subject that's a human moving or showing emotion in the frame, then try a neat angle or a creative view. So to practice what we've learned for broadcasting, for both writing and these visuals, go ahead and look at the broadcast script and storyboard document, and there you'll find how the text is matched up with visual images in a script. And those text boxes expand when you type in them, so it grows with you. Once your script is finished, you can hide the borders then around the cells and in that script for a really clean look. And that might look more familiar to scripts you've maybe seen before if you've worked at all in broadcasting. Scroll down and now you can see how that would translate to a storyboard that helps the production crew know what visual elements would match up with the audio elements above. Here now, you don't have to type in the entire script, but maybe just the first word or two with a ... and maybe the last word or two, so that those words would be cues for when they should start filming, or when a certain photo would maybe be put on the screen, things like that. So that's much more, of course, more of the visual focus for that production crew. And then why don't you go ahead and watch a video called Broadcasting Script and Camera Shot Example. As you watch the news clip, pick out which audio segments you can identify as the voiceover, the sound on tape, and the natural sound on tape. And then watch it again. Watch it and pick out the visual camera shots, the basics, the wide shot, the medium shot, the close-up, right? This is some good practice for preparing us for photography and for broadcasting, and of course our writing for both broadcasting and digital media. Hopefully this exercise then provides a good understanding for you about how audio needs to match up with visual in the filming and editing process. And of course, it still always starts with writing. It starts with that script and that planning.